A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Wolves at Dawn. The first light of morning crept through the gaps in Fiona's wooden shutters, painting thin golden lines across her rough-hewn floor. She stirred beneath her woolen blanket, reluctant to abandon the warmth of sleep for another day of solitude in the borderlands. Her small cabin stood alone at the edge of the forest, a full hour's walk from the nearest village where most shifters refused to tread. Too wild, they said. Too dangerous for an Omega alone. But Fiona had chosen isolation 5 years ago, after the death of her parents. Grief had a way of making even dangerous places feel safer than the pitying stares of packmates who whispered behind cupped hands. She pushed herself upright, red hair tumbling over her shoulders in tangled waves, and reached for the leather cord she used to tie it back. Her fingers stilled mid-motion. Something felt wrong. The air carried a heaviness that prickled against her Omega senses, weak though they were. Fiona crossed to the window and eased the shutter open. Her breath caught in her throat. 12 massive wolves sat in a perfect circle around her cabin. Their fur gleamed pure white in the dawn light, each one larger than any wolf she had ever seen. They were utterly still, positioned at even intervals like sentinels guarding a fortress. Not a single ear twitched. Not one tail moved. Terror seized her heart and squeezed. Fiona stumbled backward, her hip connecting painfully with the rough edge of her table. The wolves didn't react to the sound. They simply sat, watching the cabin with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "This isn't happening," she whispered to the empty room. "Wolves don't behave this way." But these weren't ordinary wolves. Even with her limited Omega abilities, she could sense the power radiating from them. These creatures were shifters, and strong ones at that. Fiona forced herself to breathe slowly, fighting down panic. She couldn't stay inside forever. Her water barrel was nearly empty, and she had herbs drying on racks outside that needed to be brought in before the morning dew ruined them. More importantly, she refused to be a prisoner in her own home. She pulled on her worn leather boots and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. Her hand trembled as she reached for the door latch. The iron felt cold against her palm. "You're being ridiculous," she told herself firmly. "They're just wolves. You've dealt with worse." That was a lie, of course. She'd never dealt with anything remotely close to this. Fiona pushed the door open. The wolves remained motionless, 12 pairs of eyes fixed on her with unnerving focus. She could see them clearly now in the growing light. Their fur wasn't merely white. It held an almost ethereal quality, as though starlight had been woven into each strand. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. One wolf sat directly before her door, perhaps 10 paces away. It was larger than the others, broad-shouldered and powerful, but it was the eyes that stopped her cold. They burned a brilliant gold, so vivid they seemed to glow with their own inner fire. Those eyes held intelligence far beyond what any animal should possess. Fiona's heart hammered against her ribs. She took one step forward, then another. The wolves watched but didn't move. When she walked to her water barrel, they tracked her progress with those unblinking stares. When she gathered her dried herbs, they remained sentinel still. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The golden-eyed wolf tilted its massive head, as though considering her question. For a heartbeat, Fiona could have sworn she saw something achingly human in that gaze. Then it looked away, focusing once more on the forest beyond. She retreated into her cabin, bolting the door with shaking hands. Through the window, she watched the wolves settle into their positions, apparently content to wait. For what? She couldn't begin to guess. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Fiona tried to lose herself in her usual tasks, grinding herbs for healing salves, mending a torn dress, sorting through her meager supplies. But her attention kept drifting to the window, to those 12 white forms that never seemed to move. As dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Fiona's stomach growled. She'd been too anxious to eat all day. She forced down some bread and cheese, then prepared for bed, though she doubted sleep would come. It was full dark when she heard the first howl. Fiona bolted upright, pulse racing. The sound came again, closer this time. Not from her guardians, but from somewhere deeper in the forest. A responding snarl erupted from one of the white wolves, savage and threatening. She rushed to the window. The circle of white wolves had broken formation. They stood now in a defensive line between her cabin and the forest, bodies tensed for violence. Shadows moved between the trees, multiple shapes slinking toward her home. Rogues. She could smell them now. That distinctive taint of shifters who had abandoned their humanity for the beast within. One rogue burst from the tree line, a mangy gray creature with foam flecking its jaws. It didn't get far. The golden-eyed wolf launched itself forward with terrifying speed, jaws closing around the rogue's throat. The crack of bone was audible even through the cabin walls. More rogues emerged, at least 6 of them. They were smaller than the white wolves, less organized, but they fought with the desperation of the starving. The battle that followed was brutal and swift. Fiona pressed her hands against the glass, transfixed by the violence unfolding before her. The white wolves moved with deadly precision, each one protecting its section of the perimeter. They didn't fight as individuals, but as a coordinated unit, covering each other's vulnerabilities. The golden-eyed wolf fought at the center, larger and faster than its companions. It tore through rogues with savage efficiency, golden eyes blazing with fury. When the last rogue fell, throat torn open and twitching in the dirt, the white wolf lifted its head and released a howl that shook the very air. The other wolves joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of triumph and warning. The sound vibrated through Fiona's chest, stirring something primal deep inside her omega nature. It should have frightened her. Instead, she felt oddly safe. The wolves reformed their circle, taking up their previous positions as though nothing had occurred. The golden-eyed one returned to its spot before her door, blood staining its white muzzle. It looked directly at her window, and Fiona could have sworn it nodded. "You're protecting me," she breathed, wonder replacing fear. But why? The wolf settled onto its haunches, patient and watchful. It offered no answers, only its silent vigil. That night, Fiona dreamed of golden eyes and strong hands, of a night 2 months past when the harvest festival had brought strangers to the village. She dreamed of a dark-haired man with a beard and a smile that made her forget to breathe. She dreamed of stolen hours in the forest, of whispered promises and desperate kisses. She dreamed of waking alone at dawn, the space beside her cold and empty. When morning came, the 12 white wolves still surrounded her cabin. They would remain there for days, then weeks, never leaving their posts except to hunt or drive away threats. And slowly, cautiously, Fiona would begin to feel something she hadn't experienced in 5 long years. She would begin to feel less alone. Chapter 2. Awakening. Within 2 weeks had passed since the white wolves arrived, and Fiona's world had narrowed to the space between her cabin and the circle of guardians that never left. She'd grown accustomed to their presence the way one grows accustomed to breathing. They were simply there, constant as the sunrise, but her body was changing in ways she couldn't ignore. Fiona woke on the 15th morning of their vigil with her stomach churning violently. She barely made it outside before retching into the bushes beside her door. The golden-eyed wolf lifted its head, ears pricking forward with concern. When she wiped her mouth with a trembling hand, she found those brilliant eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I'm fine," she muttered, though clearly she wasn't. The nausea had started 3 days ago, subtle at first. She'd blamed it on spoiled meat or bad water. But this morning's violent reaction told a different story, one her healer's training should have recognized sooner. Fiona pressed a hand to her abdomen, counting backward in her mind. 2 months since the harvest festival. 2 months since that stranger with golden eyes and gentle hands had made her forget every vow she'd taken to remain alone. "No," she whispered. "No. No, no." But denial changed nothing. The signs were unmistakable now that she allowed herself to see them. The exhaustion that pulled at her bones. The way certain smells made her stomach revolt. The tenderness in her breasts that she'd attributed to her monthly cycle, which hadn't come. Fiona sank onto her wooden step, burying her face in her hands. She was pregnant. Alone, unprotected except for mysterious wolves, carrying the child of a man whose name she didn't even know. The golden-eyed wolf rose and padded closer, stopping just beyond arm's reach. It sat, regarding her with such obvious concern that tears pricked her eyes. "What am I going to do?" she asked the creature, knowing it couldn't answer but needing to speak the words aloud. "How do I raise a child out here alone? What if something happens during the birth? What if—" The wolf made a low sound. Not quite a growl, but something gentler. Comforting, almost. It moved closer still. Close enough that she could have reached out and touched its massive head. Fiona didn't move. She simply sat there, letting tears slide down her cheeks while the wolf watched over her with those impossibly knowing eyes. The days that followed blurred together. Fiona tried to maintain her routines, gathering herbs and preparing medicines, but exhaustion dogged her every movement. She found herself napping in the afternoon sun, something she hadn't done since childhood. Her body demanded rest in a way that felt almost foreign. The wolves grew more vigilant. They no longer allowed her to venture far from the cabin, even for water. When she tried to walk to the stream one morning, the golden-eyed one blocked her path, his massive body an immovable wall. "I need water," she said, frustrated. "Unless you'd like to fetch it for me?" To her shock, the wolf turned and loped toward the stream. She heard splashing, then watched in amazement as it returned, carrying her bucket in its jaws. Water sloshing over the sides, but most of it intact. "That's impossible," Fiona breathed. "Wolves don't do that. You're not just wolves, are you? You're shifters. But why can't you shift back? Why stay in this form?" The golden-eyed wolf set down the bucket and held her gaze. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that transcended words. He couldn't tell her. Whether he was unable or forbidden, she didn't know. But the frustration in those brilliant eyes told her he wanted to. "Thank you," she said softly, reaching out to touch his head. His fur was impossibly soft, warm beneath her palm. For just an instant, she felt something else. A whisper of emotion that wasn't her own. Protectiveness, devotion, fear. Fiona pulled her hand back, startled. Had she imagined it? But no. Her weak omega senses had never worked that way before. Something about this wolf, about their connection, was different. On the 18th day, Thea arrived. Fiona heard her friend's voice calling from the forest edge before she saw her. The wolves had formed a tighter circle, clearly agitated by the approach of a stranger. The golden-eyed one remained at the door, a clear signal for Fiona to stay inside. "Fiona, are you in there? What in the name of the moon goddess is happening here?" Relief flooded through her. "Thea, I'm here. The wolves won't hurt you, I think." She watched through the window as Thea picked her way carefully through the circle of white forms. Her friend's dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she carried a heavy pack on her shoulders. The wolves tracked her movement, but made no move to stop her. When Thea reached the door, she practically fell inside, dropping her pack with a thud. "Fiona Whitley, you have 12 massive wolves surrounding your cabin, and you greet me with, 'I think?'" Thea's green eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and exasperation. "What is going on? I honestly don't know. They appeared 2 weeks ago and haven't left." Thea moved to the window, peering out at the circle of guardians. "They're beautiful and terrifying. Are they shifters? I think so. But they won't shift back, at least not that I've seen." "Well, that's bizarre even by Borderland standards." Thea turned back to her, then froze. Her gaze sharpened, scanning Fiona's face with the intensity of someone who'd known her since childhood. "You look pale, and you've lost weight. Are you eating? When I can keep it down." Understanding dawned in Thea's expression. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, taking Fiona's face in her hands. "How far along?" "About 10 weeks, I think." "From the harvest festival." "The stranger with the golden eyes?" Fiona nodded miserably. "I don't even know his name, Thea. He left before dawn, and I haven't seen him since. How am I supposed to do this alone?" "You're not alone." Thea pulled her into a fierce hug. "I'm here, and apparently you have an entire pack of oversized guard dogs who seem determined to protect you. Speaking of which, I brought supplies." The pack contained bread, cheese, dried meat, and fresh vegetables from the village. Thea also produced a small parcel wrapped in oilcloth. "Ginger root," she explained, "for the nausea, And I brought news from the village, though I'm not sure how helpful it'll be. Fiona's hands stilled on the vegetables. What kind of news? There are travelers passing through, asking questions. They're looking for someone, a woman, but they won't say who or why. It's strange, Fiona. The way they ask, it feels important. Official almost. Did they give any description? Not one that I heard. But people are talking. You know how villages are. Some think it's about the Alpha King. Fiona frowned. What about him? He's been missing for weeks, just vanished from the royal city without a word. The council is in an uproar, or so the traders say. Thea shrugged. Probably nothing to do with you, but I thought you should know. Strange things are happening. After Thea left, promising to return within the week, Fiona found herself staring at the golden-eyed wolf with new questions forming in her mind. The timing was too convenient. The wolves had arrived shortly after the Alpha King's disappearance. They protected her with a devotion that seemed excessive for a random Omega in the borderlands. What if these wolves were connected to the missing king? What if the stranger from the festival? No, that was impossible. She'd lain with a traveler, nothing more. The Alpha King wouldn't have reason to be at a harvest festival in a remote village. But those golden eyes haunted her dreams. 3 days after Thea's visit, Fiona was gathering herbs in her small garden when dizziness overwhelmed her. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding together. She felt herself falling, unable to stop it. Strong jaws caught her before she hit the ground. The golden-eyed wolf had moved with impossible speed, positioning himself to break her fall. His body was solid and warm beneath her, and she found herself cradled against his chest as he carried her back to the cabin. "How did you move so fast?" she whispered, her head spinning. "You were across the clearing." He laid her gently on her bed, then backed away, those golden eyes filled with worry. Fiona's hand drifted to her stomach. "I'm all right. Just stood up too quickly. The baby's fine." The wolf's entire body went rigid. He stared at her abdomen, then back to her face. If a wolf could look shocked, he did. "You didn't know?" Fiona asked, confused. "But you've been so protective, I thought—" A howl cut through the air, different from any sound she'd heard the wolves make before. The golden-eyed one tilted his head back and answered, his voice carrying a note that made something deep in Fiona's chest ache with longing. Within moments, another wolf appeared at the door. This one was slightly smaller, with ice-blue eyes that studied her with careful intelligence. The golden-eyed wolf made a series of sounds, almost like he was speaking. The other wolf listened, then turned and disappeared into the forest at a run. "What just happened?" Fiona asked. The golden-eyed wolf returned to her bedside, settling onto his haunches. He watched her with such intensity that she felt heat rise to her cheeks. 2 hours later, the blue-eyed wolf returned, and he wasn't alone. An elderly man with long silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard climbed down from the wolf's back, brushing snow from his worn travel cloak. Fiona recognized him immediately. "Jasper," she gasped, struggling to sit up. "How did you get here?" "Your guardian sent for me." Jasper's blue eyes twinkled as he gestured to the blue-eyed wolf. "Brennan here is quite persuasive. Now let's have a look at you, child. I hear you've been keeping secrets." Jasper had been her mentor when she trained as a healer, the one who'd taught her everything she knew about herbs and medicines. He'd also been her parents' closest friend, one of the few people who'd stayed in contact after their deaths. He examined her thoroughly, his weathered hands gentle as he checked her pulse and studied the color of her skin. When he placed his palm over her abdomen, his expression shifted to something like awe. "Extraordinary," he murmured. "Fiona, the child you carry has an aura I've never encountered. There's power here, immense power. The father must be someone of exceptional strength, an alpha, certainly. Perhaps even—" He stopped abruptly, glancing at the golden-eyed wolf who watched intently from the doorway. "Even what?" Fiona pressed. "Nothing. Speculation only." But Jasper's gaze lingered on the wolf before returning to her. "You're healthy, though you need to eat more. The baby is growing well, but faster than I'd expect. At this rate, you'll be showing within another week or 2. "Faster? What does that mean?" "It means the father's bloodline is very strong. Shifter pregnancies sometimes progress more quickly when the parents are both powerful. Your Omega blood is weak, but clearly the father's genetics are compensating. Jasper paused, choosing his words carefully. Fiona, do you know who the father is? A stranger. From the Harvest Festival. He had golden eyes and... She stopped, her gaze sliding to the wolf by the door. Those same golden eyes stared back at her. No. It couldn't be. Could it? Jasper followed her gaze and smiled sadly. I see. Well, that explains quite a bit. He stood, brushing off his knees. I'll return to check on you again soon. In the meantime, eat the ginger root Thea brought. Rest as much as you can, and trust your guardians. They clearly have your best interests at heart. After he left, Fiona sat alone with her thoughts and the silent wolf who never left her door. She didn't know what was happening, didn't understand why shifters would guard her so fiercely, or why the golden-eyed one seemed to know her in ways that defied explanation. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, one hand resting on her stomach where new life grew, she felt safer than she had in 5 long years. And in her dreams, golden eyes watched over her, with an expression that looked remarkably like love. Chapter 3. Shadows and Blood. 3 weeks and 4 days had passed since the white wolves arrived, and Fiona's body had begun to betray the secret growing within her. Her belly showed a slight curve now, barely noticeable beneath her loose dresses, but undeniable when she traced her fingers over the swell in private moments. The child was growing fast, just as Jasper had warned. These weren't starving rogues hunting blind. They moved in triads, marked with the same crude sigils Jasper had shown her, and behind them, half hidden among the pines, figures in hooded leather traced patterns in the air, feeding the yellow rot that burned in the wolves' eyes. The assault wasn't meant to scatter the pack, it was meant to pry Fiona loose and take her alive. The realization snapped through her like ice. The wolves had grown more protective as her pregnancy advanced. They no longer allowed her to gather wood alone, or venture to the stream without at least 2 of them flanking her. The golden-eyed one, whom she'd taken to calling Goldeye in her mind, rarely left his post by her door, except to hunt. Tonight felt different. Fiona woke to absolute darkness, her heart already racing, though she couldn't name why. The air felt wrong, charged with a tension that made her weak omega senses scream warnings. She rose from her bed, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and moved to the window. The white wolves were on their feet, no longer arranged in their usual circle, but spread in a defensive formation facing the forest. Their bodies were coiled tight, ears flat against their skulls. Even in the darkness, she could see the way their lips peeled back from their fangs. Something was coming. The attack, when it came, was swift and brutal. Dark shapes burst from the tree line, at least 8 of them. They were wolves, but nothing like her guardians. These creatures were smaller, their fur matted and unkempt, eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. Rogues. Even through the cabin walls, Fiona could smell the wrongness of them, a stench of decay and madness that made her stomach turn. The white wolves met them head-on. The battle was savage. Fiona pressed herself against the window, unable to look away from the violence unfolding in her yard. The rogues fought with desperation, snapping and tearing with no strategy beyond causing pain. But the white wolves moved as one, a coordinated unit where each member protected the others. One rogue broke through the line, charging directly toward her cabin. Goldeye intercepted it with terrifying speed, his massive jaws closing around its throat. The crack of vertebrae snapping was audible even through the glass. He dropped the body and immediately engaged another attacker, his white fur now stained with dark blood. A female wolf with ice-blue eyes fought near the edge of the clearing. Fiona recognized her as one of the guardians who often patrolled the western perimeter. She moved with deadly grace, dodging the clumsy strikes of 2 rogues at once. But one got lucky, its teeth finding purchase in her shoulder. The blue-eyed wolf yelped, stumbling backward. Something inside Fiona snapped. She didn't remember crossing to the door or yanking it open. She only knew that one moment she was inside, safe, and the next she was running across blood-soaked ground in her bare feet, ignoring the screams of her rational mind. Get away from her. The words tore from her throat as she reached the injured wolf. The rogues turned toward her, yellow eyes gleaming with hunger. Fresh prey, easy prey. Goldeye's howl of rage shook the night air. He abandoned his own fight and launched himself toward Fiona, but he was too far away. The rogues were closer. Fiona dropped to her knees beside the blue-eyed wolf, placing her hands over the bleeding wound. Heat exploded from her palms, golden light spilling between her fingers like liquid sunshine. The wolf gasped beneath her touch, muscles going rigid. "I've got you," Fiona whispered, pouring everything she had into the healing. "I've got you." The wound began to close. Not the slow mending of natural healing, but rapid tissue regeneration that left even Fiona shocked. The golden light intensified, spreading from her hands to engulf the entire wolf. A rogue lunged at her exposed back. It never made contact. Goldeye slammed into it mid-leap, driving the creature into the ground with bone-crushing force. He stood over Fiona, straddling her crouched form, his entire body vibrating with protective fury. Blood dripped from his muzzle as he snarled at the remaining rogues. The other white wolves closed ranks around them, forming an impenetrable wall. The message was clear. Touch her and die. The rogues, what few remained alive, fled into the forest. Fiona's hands were still glowing when she pulled them away from the blue-eyed wolf's shoulder. The wound was gone, healed completely without even a scar. The wolf stared at her with something like wonder, then dipped its head in unmistakable gratitude. "What did I just do?" Fiona breathed, looking at her trembling hands. The golden light was fading now, leaving only the faint warmth of power recently used. Goldeye moved closer, his massive head level with hers. Those golden eyes burned with recognition, with knowing. He'd seen this power before, or perhaps he'd expected it all along. The sound of hoofbeats approaching made her tense, but the wolves didn't react with alarm. Within minutes, Jasper appeared on horseback, his weathered face grim in the pre-dawn light. "I felt the disturbance," he said, dismounting with surprising agility for his age. His gaze swept across the scattered bodies of dead rogues, then landed on Fiona's glowing hands. "Moon goddess, it's truly awakening." "What's awakening?" Fiona demanded, though part of her already knew the answer. "Jasper, what am I?" The old healer moved among the bodies, examining them with careful attention. He stopped at one, pulling back the lips to reveal blackened gums and teeth stained with corruption. "These aren't ordinary rogues," Jasper said quietly. "Look here. These symbols carved into their flesh. I've seen these markings before, in texts about the royal court." Fiona moved closer, despite the revulsion churning in her stomach. Sure enough, crude symbols had been carved into the dead rogue's hide, still raw and weeping. Someone sent them, she realized, her blood running cold. Someone from the castle. Yes. And look closer at the corruption. Jasper's finger traced the air above the blackened gums. This is dark magic. Feitiçaria negra. It corrupts shifters from the inside out, turning them into mindless weapons. Only the rarest healers can combat such corruption, Fiona. Moonborn healers. The word hung in the air between them. "That's the second time you've said that word," Fiona said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Moonborn. What does it mean?" Jasper straightened, his blue eyes meeting hers with profound seriousness. "It means you're blessed by the moon goddess herself, born with healing abilities that go far beyond normal shifter capabilities. It's extraordinarily rare. Some believe moonborn healers appear only once in a generation, when the world needs them most." "My parents," Fiona said suddenly, pieces clicking into place. "You said they were exceptional healers. Were they?" "They were investigating corruption in the royal court when they died. Specifically, the use of forbidden magic by someone in a position of power." Jasper's expression was grave. "Your parents weren't killed by rogues in a random attack, Fiona. They were murdered, assassinated to silence them before they could expose whoever was using this corruption." The ground seemed to tilt beneath Fiona's feet. 5 years she'd believed her parents died in a tragic accident. 5 years of grief over a senseless loss. But it hadn't been senseless at all. They'd been heroes, trying to protect the kingdom, and they'd been killed for it. "Who?" The word came out as a snarl. "Who killed them?" "I don't know. But whoever it is has power in the royal court. Enough power to send corrupted shifters after them, and now after you." Jasper glanced at Goldeye, who watched their conversation with intense focus. These wolves have been protecting you from a threat I suspect they've known about from the beginning. Fiona's hand moved to her stomach, where her child grew. Why would anyone want to hurt me? I'm nobody. Just an Omega healer living in the borderlands. You're not nobody. You're a moonborn carrying a child of exceptional power. That makes you invaluable to some and a threat to others. Jasper moved closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Your parents died trying to expose evil in the court. Someone clearly fears you'll follow in their footsteps. The blue-eyed wolf rose and padded over to Jasper, nudging his hand. The old healer smiled sadly. Yes, Orla. I know. You did well protecting her. He looked at Fiona. Do you know their names? These guardians of yours? How do you know their names if they can't speak? Jasper's expression was knowing. Because I've met them before, in their human forms. This is Orla, one of the finest warriors in the Shadowpine pack. And that, he gestured to Goldeye, is someone you should recognize, though I suspect the truth hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Goldeye growled low in his throat, a warning that made Jasper raise his hands in surrender. Very well, the truth will come in its own time. The old healer gathered his supplies. I'll return to check on you in a few days. In the meantime, stay close to your guardians. Whoever sent these rogues will try again. And Fiona? Start trusting your power. It may be the only thing that saves you when the real danger comes. After Jasper left, Fiona stood in her blood-stained yard as dawn broke across the sky. The white wolves had reformed their circle, but she could see the new vigilance in their posture. They knew, as she now knew, that the peaceful weeks were over. She looked at Goldeye. Really looked at him, seeing past the wolf to the intelligence burning in those golden eyes. You knew, she said softly. You knew about my parents. About what I am. That's why you came, isn't it? The wolf held her gaze but offered no answers beyond the steady devotion she could feel radiating from him. Fiona returned to her cabin as the sun rose fully, painting the world in shades of gold. She cleaned the blood from her hands and changed into fresh clothes, her mind racing with revelations. Moonborn. Her parents murdered, dark magic in the royal court, and wolves who protected her with a dedication that suggested they knew far more than she did. She touched her stomach, feeling the flutter of life within. I don't know what's happening, she whispered to her unborn child. But I promise you, I'll find out the truth, for your grandparents, for us, for whatever future we're meant to have. Outside, 12 white wolves kept their vigil, guardians against the darkness closing in. Chapter 4. Between two forms. 5 weeks had passed since the white wolves arrived, and Fiona's world had become something she no longer recognized. Her body betrayed the secret growing within her more each day. The curve of her belly was unmistakable now, pressing against the fabric of her dresses in a way that made denial impossible. She was showing far more than she should at 3.5 months. But it wasn't just her changing body that unnerved her. It was the connection. Fiona woke one morning to emotions that weren't her own flooding through her consciousness. Worry. Fierce protectiveness. An ache so profound it made her chest tight. She sat up in bed, pressing a hand to her heart, trying to understand where these feelings originated. Through the window, she could see Goldeye in his usual position by her door. His golden eyes were already fixed on her cabin, as though he'd sensed the moment she stirred. When their gazes met, the emotions intensified. She felt his relief at seeing her awake and well, felt his constant vigilance like a weight he carried willingly. What's happening to me? She whispered to the empty room. The connection had been growing stronger for days now. She'd catch glimpses of thoughts that weren't hers, fragments of feelings that belonged to the golden-eyed wolf. At first, she'd dismissed it as imagination, stress from the pregnancy and the constant threat hanging over her. But this morning, the truth was undeniable. They were bonded somehow. She, a weak Omega who'd never experienced a mate connection, could feel this wolf as clearly as she felt her own heartbeat. Fiona dressed carefully, her movements slow as exhaustion pulled at her limbs. The baby demanded so much energy, growing at a pace that should have been impossible. She'd taken to napping twice a day, something that would have embarrassed her before, but now felt necessary for survival. When she stepped outside, Goldeye rose immediately. He moved closer than usual, close enough that she could have reached out and buried her fingers in his thick fur. His nostrils flared as he scented her, and she felt his concern spike through their connection. "I'm all right," she said softly. "Just tired. The baby is taking everything I have." The wolf's ears flattened against his skull. Through the bond, she felt his frustration, his desperate wish to communicate in ways beyond what his current form allowed. He made a low sound, almost a whine, then turned and trotted toward the forest. Fiona watched him go, confused, until he returned minutes later with Brennan, the blue-eyed wolf she'd healed weeks ago. Brennan studied her for a long moment, then disappeared into the trees at a run. "Did you just send him to fetch Jasper?" Fiona asked, wonder coloring her voice. Goldeye's eyes met hers, and she didn't need words to understand the answer. Yes. Within hours, Jasper arrived on horseback, his weathered face creased with concern. He dismounted with surprising agility for his 67 years, and immediately moved to examine her. "Fiona, child, let me see how you're progressing." She led him inside, acutely aware of Goldeye following close behind. The wolf positioned himself in the doorway, watching every movement the old healer made with intense scrutiny. Jasper's examination was thorough. His hands were gentle as they pressed against her swollen abdomen, his eyes distant as he used whatever senses allowed healers to perceive what others couldn't. When he finished, his expression was grave. "The child grows at a remarkable pace," he said quietly. "By my estimation, you're carrying what would be equivalent to a 5-month pregnancy in a human woman. At this rate, you'll deliver within another 2 to 3 weeks. "That's not possible," Fiona breathed. "I've only been pregnant for 3.5 months. Shifter pregnancies can progress more quickly when the bloodlines are exceptionally strong. Your omega blood is weak, yes, but the father's genetics are clearly dominant." Jasper glanced at Goldeye, who had moved closer, his massive head level with the table. "The child's aura is unlike anything I've encountered. There's power here, Fiona. Immense power. Royal power." The word hung in the air between them. Royal. The father couldn't have been royalty, Fiona said, though doubt crept into her voice. He was just a traveler at the harvest festival. Was he? Jasper's blue eyes were knowing. Or was he someone hiding in plain sight, seeking something he'd lost? Fiona's gaze drifted to Goldeye. Those golden eyes watched her with such intensity, such obvious longing, that her breath caught in her throat. "You should rest," Jasper said, rising. "The baby is healthy, but you need to conserve your strength. I'll return in a few days to check on you again." After he left, Fiona found herself unable to settle. The cabin felt too small, too confining. She needed air, needed space to think about everything Jasper had implied. She stepped outside as dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air smelled of approaching rain, heavy and electric. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, moving fast across the heavens. The storm hit with sudden ferocity. Wind tore through the clearing, bending trees nearly double. Rain fell in sheets, soaking Fiona to the skin within seconds. Lightning split the sky, followed immediately by thunder that shook the ground beneath her feet. She knew, and yet she bit the truth back, afraid that naming it would shatter the fragile peace holding him together. "Get inside," she called to the wolves, though she knew they wouldn't obey. They never abandoned their posts, regardless of weather. Another bolt of lightning struck, this one so close Fiona could smell the ozone. The brilliant flash illuminated the entire clearing in stark white light, and in that instant, she saw him. Goldeye stood frozen mid-transformation, caught between forms. His body was neither fully wolf nor fully human, but something terrible and beautiful in between. Fur gave way to human skin in patches. His face held both lupine and human features, mouth open in what looked like a scream of agony, though no sound emerged. One arm was still a wolf's leg, the other a man's limb ending in fingers that clutched at nothing. He was trapped, fighting against something invisible that held him suspended between shapes, denying him the completion of either form. The light faded, plunging them back into darkness and rain. When Fiona's vision adjusted, Goldeye was fully wolf again, trembling with the effort of whatever battle he'd just fought. "Oh, gods," she whispered, moving toward him without thinking. "What's wrong with you? What's keeping you like this?" The wolf's golden eyes found hers, and she felt his anguish crash over her through their connection. Frustration, rage at his helplessness, desperation to speak, to explain, to make her understand. Fiona dropped to her knees in the mud, heedless of the rain, and reached for him. Her hands found his massive head, fingers tangling in wet fur. "I can feel you," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't understand how, but I can feel everything you're feeling. The bond between us, it's real, isn't it? You're not just any wolf. You're my—" She couldn't say the word, couldn't name what her heart recognized, but her mind refused to accept. Goldeye pressed his head against her hands, a sound rumbling from deep in his chest that might have been a sob if wolves could cry. Through their connection, she felt him trying to push thoughts toward her, trying to communicate in the only way available to him. Images flickered through her mind. A harvest festival, dancing under lanterns. Her own face, laughing at something he'd said. Strong hands cupping her cheeks. A kiss that tasted of honey wine and promises. Golden eyes meeting hers in the darkness. "The stranger," Fiona breathed. "You were the stranger from the festival. But how? Why didn't you come back? Why stay like this, trapped as a wolf, when you could—" Frustration poured from him, so intense it made her gasp. He wanted to tell her, desperately, but something prevented it, some force that kept him locked in this form. Unable to shift fully, unable to speak. A curse, she realized suddenly. Someone cursed you. That's why you can't change back. That's why you've been guarding me as a wolf all this time. Goldeye's entire body shuddered with what might have been relief that she finally understood. He pulled away from her touch and moved to a fallen branch. Using his paws and muzzle, he began arranging smaller sticks and stones in patterns. Fiona watched, mesmerized, as he created crude symbols. A crown, a circle of figures around a single shape, lines connecting two forms together. "Your royalty," she said, piecing it together. "The Alpha King? Is that who you are?" His golden eyes blazed with confirmation. "And these," she gestured to the other wolves, "they're your guard. They're protecting me because I'm carrying the heir. Your heir." Again, that fierce confirmation. Fiona sat back on her heels, rain streaming down her face, her mind reeling. The Alpha King had been missing for weeks. Everyone knew that. And all this time, he'd been here, cursed to remain in wolf form, unable to reveal his identity or claim his mate. "Who did this to you?" she asked. Who would dare curse the Alpha King? Goldeye couldn't answer that question with sticks and stones. But through their bond, she felt his certainty. Someone with power, someone in the royal court, someone who wanted him unable to protect what was his. Thunder crashed overhead, and lightning illuminated them both once more. In that flash, Fiona saw past the wolf to the man trapped within. She saw the face from her memories, the stranger who'd made her feel alive for one perfect night. She saw golden eyes that had haunted her dreams, now watching her with a devotion that transcended words or forms. "I'll help you," she whispered, pressing her hand to his muzzle once more. "I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way to break this curse. You saved me. Now I'll save you." The wolf pressed into her touch, and through their connection, she felt something new. Hope. For the first time since the curse had been cast, he felt genuine hope. As the storm raged around them, Fiona and the Alpha King sat together in the rain, connected by threads of fate and magic, and a child that grew between them. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, didn't know how to break a curse strong enough to bind the most powerful shifter in the kingdom. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. The bond between them pulsed with warmth despite the cold rain, a promise of something neither could name, but both desperately wanted. When she finally retreated to her cabin, Goldeye returned to his post by her door, but everything had changed. They both felt it. The connection between them was no longer just protection or duty, or even simple attraction. It was becoming something deeper, something that neither curse nor conspiracy could fully contain, something that might be strong enough to save them both. Chapter 5. Breaking the Chains. 6 weeks had passed since the white wolves arrived, and Fiona's body bore the unmistakable evidence of the life growing within her. Her belly was round and prominent now, the equivalent of what would be 5 months in a human pregnancy according to Jasper's estimates. The child seemed to pulse with energy, especially when Goldeye was near. The morning started like any other. Fiona was grinding herbs for a healing salve when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. The wolves immediately went on alert, forming a tighter circle around her cabin. But they didn't attack when a young man on horseback burst through the tree line, his face pale with panic. "Miss Whitley," he gasped, nearly falling from his horse. "It's Thea. There was an attack at the tavern. She's hurt badly. She's asking for you. Please, you have to come now." Fiona's heart seized in her chest. How badly hurt? I don't know. There was so much blood. The village healer says she needs someone with stronger abilities. The messenger's eyes were desperate. "She keeps calling your name." Goldeye moved to block Fiona's path to the door, a clear signal that leaving was dangerous. Through their bond, she felt his concern, his certainty that this was a trap. "I have to go," Fiona said firmly, meeting those golden eyes. "She's my closest friend. If there's any chance I can help her, I have to try." The wolf held her gaze for a long moment, an entire conversation passing between them through the connection they shared. Finally, he stepped aside, but his body language screamed reluctance. Within minutes, all 12 wolves surrounded Fiona as she prepared for the journey. Brennan brought her travel cloak in his jaws. Orla positioned herself at Fiona's left side, ready to support her if needed. The formation was tight, protective, prepared for battle. "We'll move quickly," Fiona told them, knowing they understood every word. "Thea needs me." The journey through the forest should have taken an hour at a normal pace. The wolves pushed for speed, but not so fast that Fiona couldn't keep up in her condition. She moved as quickly as her pregnant body allowed, one hand pressed to her swollen belly, the other gripping Orla's thick fur for balance when the terrain grew rough. They were halfway to the village when the attack came. Shifters burst from the undergrowth on all sides, at least 20 of them. These weren't rogues like the ones before. These were organized, coordinated, their movements showing military training. And all of them bore the same corruption Jasper had identified weeks ago, their eyes glowing with sickly yellow light, dark symbols carved into their flesh. "It's a trap," Fiona cried. But the white wolves were already moving. The battle erupted with savage intensity. The white wolves fought with desperate fury, but they were outnumbered nearly 2-1. Fiona watched in horror as Brennan took a vicious bite to his shoulder. Orla went down under the weight of 2 attackers. The circle around Fiona was collapsing. Goldeye fought like a demon possessed, his jaws tearing through enemies with terrifying efficiency. But even he couldn't be everywhere at once. A corrupted shifter broke through the defensive line, charging straight for Fiona. She stumbled backward, her foot catching on a root. The world tilted as she fell, landing hard on her side. Pain exploded through her abdomen, sharp and overwhelming. Contractions. She was having contractions. "No," she gasped, curling around her belly protectively. "Not now, please, not now." The corrupted shifter loomed over her, teeth bared, ready to strike. Goldeye's howl of rage split the air, but he was too far away. He'd never reach her in time. Terror gave way to fury. Fiona thought of her unborn child, of the wolves who'd protected her for 6 weeks, of Goldeye who'd loved her silently from the shadows. She thought of her parents, murdered for trying to stop this very corruption, and something inside her snapped. "Get away from us!" The words tore from her throat as golden light exploded from her hands. The power that erupted from Fiona was unlike anything she'd summoned before. It wasn't a gentle healing warmth, but a blaze of pure energy that radiated outward in waves. The corrupted shifter attacking her simply disintegrated, reduced to ash before it could scream. The light spread like wildfire, touching every corrupted creature in the clearing. They shrieked as the golden radiance consumed them. burning away the dark magic that had twisted their bodies and minds. Some fell to the ground, freed from the corruption, but too damaged to survive. Others fled into the forest, howling with pain and confusion, but Fiona barely noticed. All her focus had narrowed to the wolf before her. Goldeye had fought his way to her side, positioning himself between her and any remaining threats. Blood stained his white fur. Exhaustion pulled at his powerful frame. But those golden eyes blazed with fierce determination. She reached for him, her hands still glowing with residual power. The moment her fingers touched his muzzle, she felt it. The bond between them, the connection that had been growing stronger every day, suddenly crystallized into something absolute and undeniable. "You're mine," she whispered, the words coming from someplace deeper than conscious thought. "My mate, my king. I see you, Edric Thornval. I claim you as mine." The recognition wasn't just intellectual anymore. It was soul-deep, a truth her entire being accepted and embraced. She knew him, had always known him, even when she didn't understand why. The stranger from the festival, the devoted guardian, the man trapped in wolf form. They were all the same. They were all hers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Goldeye's body went rigid beneath her touch. He threw his head back and released a howl that shook the very air, a sound of agony and ecstasy and profound relief all woven together. Golden light, brighter than anything Fiona had summoned, erupted around him. The transformation was violent. Bones cracked and reformed with sounds that made Fiona's stomach turn. Fur receded, replaced by golden skin stretched over powerful muscles. Limbs lengthened and shifted, paws becoming hands and feet. The process that should have taken seconds stretched into nearly a minute, as though years of imprisonment were fighting the release. And then a man knelt before her where the wolf had been. He was magnificent, taller than any shifter Fiona had ever seen, his body sculpted with the kind of strength that came from both birth and battle. Dark hair fell across his forehead in sweat-dampened waves, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a face that was both beautiful and brutal. But it was his eyes that confirmed everything, those same golden eyes that had watched her for 6 weeks, now gazing at her from a human face. "Fiona," he breathed, and hearing her name in his deep voice after so long made tears spring to her eyes. "My Fiona, you did it. You broke the curse." "Edric?" She touched his face with trembling fingers, needing to confirm he was real. "It's really you? It's really me?" His hands came up to cover hers, pressing them against his bearded cheeks. "I've been trying to reach you for 6 weeks. Trapped in that form, unable to speak, unable to explain. Do you know how maddening it's been? Watching you struggle with the pregnancy, seeing you discover your powers, feeling our bond grow stronger, and not being able to tell you who I was? The other white wolves were shifting now too, the breaking of the curse affecting them all. Warriors emerged where beasts had stood moments before. Brennan, revealed as a battle-scarred man with ice-blue eyes. Orla, a fierce woman with dark hair and a fighter's build. 10 others Fiona didn't know, all of them wearing expressions of profound relief. But Fiona's attention remained fixed on Edric, her king, her mate, the father of her child. "The curse," she said, her mind racing to understand. "How? Why?" "Later. We'll explain everything later." Edric's hands moved to her swollen belly, his touch gentle despite the clear strength in his fingers. "Right now, I need to know. Are you all right? The contractions?" Fiona became aware that the sharp pains had faded. Her moonborn power, fully awakened now, had somehow stabilized her body. "I'm okay. The baby's okay. But Thea was a trap," Brennan said grimly, now dressed in clothing one of the other guards had carried. "The messenger was compromised. Probably didn't even know he was being used." Rage burned through Fiona. "Someone used my best friend as bait to kill me?" "To kill the heir," Edric corrected, his voice hard as stone. "And to eliminate the Moonborn who could expose their corruption. Someone in my court has been using forbidden magic to create those creatures. The same person who cursed me when I tried to claim you as my Luna." They've been hunting you, Fiona, since before your parents died. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Her parents, investigating corruption, their murder, the curse that trapped Edric, the attacks on her. It was all connected, all orchestrated by someone who feared what she represented. "We need to get you to the castle," Edric said, rising and pulling her gently to her feet. "You'll be safe there. We'll expose whoever is behind this, and then—" He stopped, his golden eyes searching hers. "If you'll accept me. Accept this bond between us. I know I've asked you to trust me without explanation. I know you have every reason to refuse." Fiona placed her fingers against his lips, silencing him. "You guarded me for 6 weeks. You protected me when I didn't understand why. You've proven yourself 1,000 times over." She smiled, feeling tears slide down her cheeks. "Yes, Edric Thornval. I accept you as my mate. I accept whatever future that brings." The kiss that followed was fierce and desperate. 6 weeks of longing and frustration and love pouring into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, the entire spectral guard was grinning. "About time," Orla muttered, earning a glare from Brennan. Edric laughed, the sound rich and full. Then his expression sobered. "We ride for Thornval Castle, and whoever has been orchestrating this conspiracy is about to learn what happens when they threaten the Alpha King's mate and heir." As the spectral guard prepared for the journey, Fiona allowed herself one moment to marvel at how completely her life had transformed. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a lonely Omega expecting the child of a stranger. Now she stood beside the Alpha King, her mate bond fully formed, her moon-born powers awakened, ready to face whatever darkness awaited them. The curse was broken, but the real battle was just beginning. Chapter 6: Truth and Grief. The forest clearing felt different now that the curse was broken. Edric stood before Fiona in his human form for the first time in 6 weeks, surrounded by his spectral guard who were rapidly dressing in clothing they'd kept stored in hidden caches throughout the territory. The transformation from silent wolves to speaking warriors was jarring, and Fiona found herself overwhelmed by the sudden shift from solitude to being surrounded by strangers who knew her intimately. "Luna Queen," Brennan said formally, dropping to one knee before her. His ice-blue eyes held respect, and something that looked remarkably like affection. "It's an honor to finally address you properly. I am Brennan, second commander of the Spectral Guard." Orla followed suit, her fierce features softening as she knelt. "Orla, first blade of the Guard. You healed me when I fell. I owe you my life, my queen." One by one, the other guards introduced themselves, each kneeling in formal acknowledgement of her status. Fiona's head spun with names and titles, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly as though to ground herself in something real. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm not a queen. I'm just Fiona." "You're my mate," Edric said firmly, his hand finding hers. "Which makes you Luna Queen of Valdoria. These warriors have protected you for 6 weeks, Fiona. They know exactly who you are." She looked at their faces, seeing the truth of his words reflected back at her. These weren't strangers. They were the wolves who'd hunted for her when food ran low, who'd stood vigil through storms, who'd fought rogues and corrupted shifters to keep her safe. She knew them, even if she'd never heard them speak until now. "We need to move," Brennan said, rising. "That attack was coordinated. Whoever sent those creatures knows where we are. We should reach the castle before they can mount another assault." "Wait." Fiona's voice cut through the preparations. "Someone tell me what's happening. All of it. No more secrets. No more half-truths. I deserve to know why my parents were murdered and why someone wants me dead." Edric's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You're right. Come. We'll talk as we move to safer ground." They traveled to a rocky outcropping that overlooked the valley, defensible and with clear sight lines in all directions. The Spectral Guard positioned themselves as sentries, while Edric guided Fiona to a flat stone where she could sit. Her legs were trembling from exhaustion and the aftermath of unleashing so much power. 3 years ago, Edric began, his voice heavy with old pain. "My first Luna, Adelina, was murdered. She died in what was made to look like a riding accident. But I knew the truth. Someone in my court had orchestrated her death. She'd discovered evidence of forbidden magic being used, corruption spreading through the kingdom. She was investigating when they killed her. Fiona's breath caught. Like my parents. Yes. Your parents were exceptional healers who noticed the same corruption Adelina did. They were gathering evidence, preparing to bring it before the royal council, when they were killed. The attack on them was made to look like rogues, but it was assassination. Edric's golden eyes blazed with barely contained fury. For 3 years, I've been trying to find who was responsible. I couldn't trust anyone in the court. The conspirator had to be someone with significant power and access. But then you met me at the Harvest Festival? Fiona said quietly. Edric's expression softened, his hand moving to cup her cheek. I went to that festival to escape the court politics for one night. To be just a man, not a king. And then I saw you dancing under the lanterns, laughing with your friend. You were so alive, so genuine. When our eyes met, I felt the mate bond snap into place with such force it nearly drove me to my knees. I felt something too, Fiona admitted. I thought it was just attraction, but it was more than that, wasn't it? Much more. The mate bond is sacred, Fiona. It's chosen by the moon goddess herself. I knew immediately that you were meant to be my Luna. His voice grew bitter. I planned to return the next day, to properly court you, to explain who I was and ask if you'd accept the bond. But when I got back to the castle and announced my intention to the council, everything went wrong. Brennan stepped closer, his expression grim. Von Corwin objected immediately. He claimed it was too soon after Adelina's death, that the kingdom needed stability, that taking an unknown Omega as Luna would cause political problems. But the king insisted. That's when the curse was cast. Vaughn, Fiona repeated, the name burning like acid on her tongue. He's the one who killed my parents? We believe so. Edric confirmed. The curse that trapped me was ancient magic, forbidden for centuries. Only someone with deep knowledge of dark sorcery could have wielded it. Vaughn has that knowledge. He's been using it to corrupt shifters, turning them into weapons. Your parents discovered this. So did Adelina, and both paid with their lives. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. And I'm a threat because I'm a moonborn healer. I can sense the corruption, can't I? I can see what he's done and undo it. Exactly. You're the one person who could expose him completely. Edric's hands tightened on hers. The curse had 3 conditions to break. You had to awaken as a moonborn healer. You had to consciously recognize our mate bond. And you had to be in mortal danger, which would force your power to fully manifest. Vaughn thought if he kept me trapped as a wolf, unable to speak or claim you properly, you'd never awaken, and then he could kill you before you became a threat. Rage burned through Fiona's grief, hot and purifying. My parents died trying to stop him. They died as heroes, not victims of some random attack. They died protecting the kingdom, Brennan said gently. And they died protecting you. Vaughn knows about the Whitley bloodline, knows that moonborn abilities run in your family. He wanted you dead before you could follow in their footsteps. Tears streamed down Fiona's face, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of fury and pride, and profound loss finally understood. For 5 years, she'd believed her parents' deaths were meaningless. Now she knew they'd sacrificed everything to fight evil. Edric pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest, finally allowing herself to grieve properly. He held her through it, murmuring words of comfort, one hand stroking her hair while the other rested protectively on her belly. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I couldn't protect them. I'm sorry you had to grow up believing their deaths were pointless. They were heroes, Fiona, and they'd be so proud of you now. When the storm of grief passed, Fiona pulled back and wiped her eyes. What about Thea? The messenger said she was hurt. That was the bait, Orla said, her voice apologetic. We sent scouts ahead when we realized it was a trap. Your friend was never injured. The messenger had been compromised, probably through the same corruption magic. He believed what he was saying, but the information was false. Relief flooded through Fiona. So she's safe? For now. But Vaughn knows you care about her. He'll use that if he can. Brennan's expression was serious. We need to get you to the castle. Once you're officially recognized as Luna Queen, you'll be under the protection of ancient laws. Vaughn won't be able to touch you without facing consequences from every pack in the kingdom. As if summoned by talk of friends, hoofbeats sounded in the distance. The guard immediately went on alert, weapons drawn. But Edric raised a hand, nostrils flaring as he scented the air. It's Jasper, and someone else. Moments later, the old healer appeared on horseback, with Thea clinging to the saddle behind him. Both dismounted quickly, and Thea ran straight to Fiona, pulling her into a fierce hug. I heard there was an attack, Thea said, her voice muffled against Fiona's shoulder. Jasper came and got me. We had to make sure you were all right. I'm fine. Better than fine. Fiona pulled back to look at her friend. Thea, I have so much to tell you. You're pregnant. You've been living with 12 magical wolves, and apparently you're about to become a queen, Thea said dryly. Jasper filled me in on the ride. Honestly, Fiona, your life has gotten remarkably complicated. Despite everything, Fiona laughed. Trust Thea to cut straight through the drama to the heart of things. Jasper approached Edric, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty, it's good to see you in your proper form again. Though I must say, you made a very dedicated wolf. Jasper. Edric clasped the old healer's forearm. Thank you for watching over her when I couldn't speak to ask properly. She's like a daughter to me. I would have protected her regardless. Jasper's expression grew serious. But we need to move quickly. Vaughn will know the curse is broken. He'll be preparing his next move. Agreed. Edric turned to his guard. We ride for Thornvale Castle immediately. Full defensive formation. Brennan, Orla, you flank the Luna Queen. Everyone else, standard protection pattern. As the group prepared to depart, Fiona found herself looking at Edric with new eyes. She'd loved him as Goldeye, the devoted wolf who'd protected her, but now she was seeing the Alpha King, the leader who commanded absolute loyalty and respect. The two sides of him were the same person, yet so different. He caught her staring and moved closer. Having second thoughts? No, she said honestly. Just trying to process everything. Yesterday I was a pregnant Omega hiding in the borderlands. Today I'm apparently a Luna Queen carrying the royal heir. And tomorrow? He asked softly. Tomorrow we face whatever comes next. Together. She took his hand, feeling their bond pulse with warmth. But Edric, I need you to promise me something. When we confront Vaughn, when this is over, I want justice for my parents. I want him to answer for what he's done. You have my word, Edric said, his voice carrying the weight of a royal oath. Vaughn Corwin will face judgment for his crimes. I swear it on my crown and on the life of our child. As they mounted up for the journey to the castle, Fiona looked back one last time at her cabin in the distance. That part of her life was over. Whatever came next would be terrifying and dangerous, but she wouldn't face it alone. She had her mate, her guard, her friends, and the power of her moonborn heritage. And soon, Vaughn Corwin would learn what happened when he underestimated a healer's capacity for justice. Chapter 7. Justice and Birth. Thornvale Castle rose before them like a mountain carved by gods. Black stone towers reached toward the sky, their peaks crowned with flags bearing the royal crest. Guards lined the battlements, their armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. As Edric's party approached the massive gates, horns sounded, their triumphant notes echoing across the valley. Fiona's hands tightened on the reins of her horse. Her belly had grown heavy during the journey, and exhaustion pulled at her bones. But she kept her back straight, refusing to show weakness as they entered the courtyard. The arrival caused immediate chaos. Servants and nobles alike poured from the castle's many doors, their faces shifting from confusion to shock to joy as they recognized their king. Edric had been missing for 6 weeks. His return should have been cause for celebration, but celebration quickly gave way to tension when Edric dismounted and pulled Fiona from her horse with obvious tenderness, his hand protective on her swollen belly. The king has returned with a mate, someone whispered, the words spreading through the crowd like wildfire. She's pregnant. with the air. Brennan and the spectral guard formed a tight circle around Fiona, their presence making it clear that anyone who wished to approach would have to go through them first. Orla moved to Fiona's side, her fierce expression daring anyone to speak against their Luna Queen. "Summon the council," Edric commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority of kingship. "Emergency session. Now." Within an hour, the great council chamber was filled. Nobles and advisors took their seats at the massive circular table, murmuring among themselves about the king's unexpected return and his mysterious companion. Fiona sat at Edric's right hand, her position making her status unmistakable. Von Corwin entered last, his gray eyes widening in shock when he saw Edric in human form. The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly, schooling his features into an expression of relief. "Your Majesty," Von said smoothly, bowing low. "Thank the moon goddess you've returned safely. We've been searching everywhere for you. What happened? Where have you been?" "I've been cursed," Edric said flatly. "Trapped in wolf form for 6 weeks, unable to speak or shift back. Convenient, wasn't it, Vaughn? It kept me from claiming my mate, from protecting the heir, from investigating the corruption spreading through my kingdom." Vaughn's carefully maintained expression cracked slightly. "I don't understand what you're implying." "Don't you?" Edric gestured to Brennan, who stepped forward carrying a leather satchel. "Perhaps these will refresh your memory. Documents detailing your study of forbidden magic. Testimonies from witnesses who saw you meeting with suspicious individuals. Evidence linking you to the mercenaries who attacked the Luna Queen. And most damning of all, proof that you ordered the assassination of Samuel and Margaret Whitley 5 years ago." The council erupted in shocked whispers. Vaughn's face went from pale to red, his hands clenching into fists on the table. "This is absurd," he snarled. "These are lies fabricated by enemies who wish to see me fall. I've served this kingdom faithfully for decades. I would never—" "You murdered my parents," Fiona said, her voice cutting through his denials. She stood, both hands pressed to her swollen belly, her green eyes blazing with righteous fury. "They discovered you were using corruption magic to create weapons, to build power. So you had them killed and made it look like a rogue attack. The ravings of a pregnant Omega," Vaughn sneered, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Your Majesty, surely you don't believe—" "I believe the evidence before me," Edric said coldly. "I believe the testimonies of my spectral guard, who have been investigating you for weeks. And I believe we're about to have confirmation of your guilt through ancient law." Jasper stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the other advisors. In his hands, he carried a crystal vessel filled with glowing liquid that pulsed with silver light. "Truth water," the old healer announced. "Blessed by the moon goddess herself, used in royal trials since the founding of Valdoria. Those who drink it cannot lie. Will you drink, Counselor Corwin? Or will you admit your guilt here and now?" Vaughn's eyes darted toward the door, calculating his chances of escape. But the spectral guard blocked every exit, their hands on their weapons. "I won't be subjected to this farce," Vaughn declared, pushing back from the table. "Seize him," Edric commanded. Vaughn's desperation manifested as violence. He shifted mid-leap, his wolf form bursting through his clothing as he lunged for the nearest exit. But Brennan was faster. The second commander's tackle brought Vaughn crashing to the floor, and within moments, the traitor was pinned beneath the combined weight of 3 guards. "Force him to drink," Edric ordered, his voice devoid of mercy. They held Vaughn's jaws open while Jasper poured the truth water down his throat. The effect was immediate. His body went rigid, silver light spreading through his veins like liquid fire. When he shifted back to human form, his eyes were unfocused, his mouth moving without conscious control. "Did you curse the Alpha King?" Edric demanded. "Yes." The word was torn from Vaughn's lips against his will. "Yes, I cursed you. I couldn't let you claim another Luna. Not when I was so close to having my nephew installed as heir. Did you murder Adelina Thornval, my first Luna?" "Yes. She discovered my research into forbidden magic. She would have exposed me. Did you order the assassination of Samuel and Margaret Whitley?" "Yes. They were investigating the same corruption. They had to die before they could present evidence to you. Did you send corrupted shifters to kill Fiona Whitley and the child she carries?" "Yes." multiple times. The moonborn healer and the royal heir both had to die. My nephew would have been next in line for the throne. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Even those who had suspected Vaughn's treachery looked shaken by the breadth of his crimes. "Vaughn Corwin," Edric said, his voice ringing with royal authority. "By your own confession, you are guilty of high treason, murder of a Luna Queen, conspiracy to murder a second Luna Queen, and the royal heir, use of forbidden magic, and crimes against the kingdom of Valdoria. The penalty is death." Vaughn's eyes cleared as the truth water's effect faded. His face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything? My supporters remain. The corruption I've seeded throughout the kingdom won't disappear with my death. You've won this battle, nephew, but the war..." Pain exploded through Fiona's abdomen, cutting off whatever threat Vaughn had been about to make. She gasped, doubling over as her belly contracted with brutal force. This wasn't the false contractions from before. This was real labor, and it was happening now. "Fiona!" Edric was at her side instantly, catching her before she fell. "No, not now, it's too soon. The stress," Jasper said, rushing forward. "The confrontation, the emotional toll. Her body can't handle it. We need to get her to the birthing chamber immediately." Edric swept Fiona into his arms, moving with supernatural speed through the castle's corridors. The spectral guard followed, abandoning Vaughn to the other nobles to deal with. Nothing mattered now except getting Fiona somewhere safe. The royal birthing chamber was a spacious room with a massive bed and every medical supply a healer could need. Edric laid Fiona down gently, his hands shaking as another contraction racked her body. "I'm here," he murmured, brushing sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. "I'm not leaving you." "Actually," Jasper said quietly, "you must." Edric's head snapped toward the old healer, his eyes blazing gold. "What did you say?" "During a moonborn's first birth, her power becomes volatile. It reacts to protect the mother and child, but alpha power in close proximity can trigger a dangerous response. Hemorrhaging, power explosions that could harm both mother and child. It's not tradition, Your Majesty. It's biology. If you stay, you could kill them both." Fiona saw the devastation in Edric's face, felt his anguish through their bond. "Go," she gasped between contractions. "Our baby needs you to go. I can't leave you in pain. You can, and you will." She squeezed his hand with all her strength. "Trust me to do this. Trust Jasper and the healers. I'll bring our child into this world, Edric. But you have to let me." With visible effort, Edric released her hand and stepped back. "I'll be right outside the door. If anything goes wrong, it won't," Fiona said with more confidence than she felt. Edric left the chamber, and immediately Thea rushed in with several healers Fiona didn't recognize. Her friend's presence was a comfort, even as another contraction made her cry out. "I'm here," Thea said, gripping Fiona's hand. "We're going to get through this together." The labor was brutal. Hours passed in a blur of pain and effort. Outside, Fiona could feel Edric pacing, his distress bleeding through their bond. Once, she heard him roar in fury when her screams grew too loud, heard Brennan and Orla struggling to keep him from breaking through the door. "The cord," one of the healers said urgently. "It's wrapped around the first baby's neck. We need..." "I know," Fiona gasped. Golden light erupted from her hands as she reached deep inside herself for power. She could sense her children now, both of them fighting to be born. Twins. She was having twins, and one was in danger. Her moonborn abilities surged, guiding the babies, adjusting positions, ensuring safe passage. The pain became secondary to the overwhelming need to protect her children. "Push!" Jasper commanded from just outside the door, coordinating the healers through the crisis. Fiona pushed, pouring everything she had into bringing her children into the world. And finally, blessedly, she heard the most beautiful sound in creation, a baby's cry. "It's a girl," Thea sobbed, laughing through tears. "Fiona, she's perfect." But there was no time to rest. The second baby was coming, and Fiona's power flared again, easing the way. Minutes later, another cry joined the first. A boy. one of the healers announced. Twins, both healthy, both bearing the aura of extraordinary power. Fiona collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but elated. "Let Edric in," she whispered. "Let him meet his children." The door burst open before anyone could move to unlock it. Edric strode in, his face wet with tears, his eyes finding Fiona immediately. "You did it," he breathed, crossing to the bed. "My fierce, incredible mate. You did it." A healer placed the first baby in Fiona's arms, a tiny girl with a tuft of dark hair and golden eyes already beginning to open. The second, a boy with his mother's red hair, was placed in Edric's trembling hands. "Our children," Fiona whispered, looking up at her mate through tears. "Our future." Edric sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her, and leaned down to press his forehead to hers. "Our everything," he agreed. Outside, the 12 white wolves who had guarded her for so long howled in celebration, their voices rising in a chorus of joy that echoed across the kingdom. Chapter 8. Forever Guarded. 6 months had passed since the twins came into the world, and Thornvale Castle had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The once austere fortress now echoed with laughter and the delighted squeals of royal children. Life had returned to the black stone walls, breathing warmth into spaces that had known only duty and discipline for far too long. Fiona stood in the royal nursery, watching as her daughter reached chubby hands toward a shaft of afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. Eliana had her father's golden eyes and dark hair, but her mother's curious nature. At 6 months old, she was already showing signs of exceptional power. Yesterday, she'd made a toy wolf float across the room without touching it, sending the attending nursemaids into a panic. "She's getting stronger," Thea observed from the doorway, a smile playing at her lips. Her friend had moved into the castle permanently, taking the role of Fiona's personal advisor and confidant. "Soon she'll be shifting objects at will." "I know. Jasper says it's unprecedented for a child so young to manifest abilities." Fiona lifted her daughter, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead. "But then, she's the daughter of an Alpha King and a Moonborn healer. I suppose we should expect the extraordinary." Beside his sister, in the ornate cradle, Finn dozed peacefully. The boy had inherited his mother's red hair and a temperament that was far calmer than his twins. But Fiona had caught him watching the world with those same golden eyes, as though he understood far more than any infant should. "How are you feeling?" Thea asked, moving closer. "Really feeling, not the answer you give the healers." Fiona smiled, appreciating her friend's ability to see past royal facades. "Exhausted, overwhelmed, happier than I ever thought possible." She looked down at Eliana, who was now trying to grab her mother's hair. "Some nights, I still wake up expecting to be back in my cabin, alone and scared. Then Edric pulls me close, and the twins start fussing, and I remember this is real. This is my life now. You've done more than survive, Fiona. You've thrived." Thea gestured toward the window, where the view showed the bustling castle grounds below. "The healer school you established is already training 50 students. The corruption Vaughn spread is being systematically cleansed from the kingdom, and the people adore their Luna Queen, who fought her way from the borderlands to save them all." Heat crept up Fiona's cheeks. "I didn't do it alone. The spectral guard protected me. Edric fought the curse. You and Jasper kept me sane. And yet, you're the one who broke the curse with your power and your heart." Thea's expression grew serious. "Vaughn's execution last month brought closure to many. Your parents can finally rest in peace, knowing their daughter finished what they started." The execution had been difficult to witness, but necessary. Vaughn had faced judgment for his crimes before the entire kingdom, his corruption exposed for all to see. Edric had offered Fiona the choice of whether to attend. She'd stood beside her mate, her hand in his, as justice was finally served. "Luna Queen?" A knock interrupted her thoughts. Brennan entered, bowing respectfully. The second commander had become a frequent presence in their lives, his loyalty absolute. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the gardens. He says it's important." Fiona's heart quickened. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing wrong, my queen. I believe he simply wishes to spend time with his family. Brennan's usually stern expression softened as he looked at the twins. And perhaps show the heirs their future kingdom. The castle gardens had been Fiona's project, transforming what had been purely functional herb beds into a place of beauty. Flowers bloomed in riotous colors, their sweet scent carried on the afternoon breeze. In the center, beneath an ancient oak tree, Edric waited. He'd changed in subtle ways over the past months. The weight of kingship still rested on his broad shoulders, but joy had softened some of the harder edges. Now, watching him play with a carved wooden wolf, clearly waiting for his family, Fiona's heart swelled with love. "There's my beautiful Luna," Edric said, rising as she approached. He took Eliana from her arms, lifting the baby high and earning delighted giggles. "And my fierce little princess. Were you practicing your magic again? Brennan told me you made the guard's weapons float. She's going to be powerful," Fiona said, settling onto the blanket Edric had spread beneath the tree. "Both of them will be." Like their mother, Edric sat beside her, careful not to jostle Eliana as Finn began to stir in Fiona's arms. "I have something to ask you." "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just... I've been thinking about your cabin. The place where we first met, where you discovered your strength, where our story truly began." His golden eyes found hers. "I want to take you back there. Show our children where their parents fell in love." Emotion clogged Fiona's throat. The cabin in the borderlands? After everything that happened there? Especially because of everything that happened there. That place represents your courage, your resilience. It's where I watched you for 6 weeks, falling more in love with you every day, even though I couldn't speak. Edric shifted Eliana to one arm so he could take Fiona's hand. "I want our children to know that story, to understand that even in our darkest moments, love can find a way." "When would we go?" "Soon. Before winter comes." He smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his stern features. "We'll bring the spectral guard, of course. Some habits are hard to break." As if summoned by the mention, Orla appeared at the garden entrance, followed by the rest of the guard. They'd been given leave to resume normal duties, but they still gravitated toward Fiona and the twins. Protecting the royal family had become their purpose, their pride. "Permission to approach, your majesties?" Orla asked formally, though her eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. "Granted," Edric said, amusement coloring his voice. "Though you know you don't need to ask." The spectral guard gathered around the blanket, 12 warriors who had protected Fiona when she was just a frightened Omega. Now they knelt before her as Luna Queen. But the bonds forged during those weeks remained strong. "The twins grow well," Brennan observed, his scarred face softening as Finn reached toward him with tiny hands. "Strong, healthy. The kingdom is blessed." "The kingdom is blessed because all of you kept them safe before they were even born," Fiona said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I'll never forget what you sacrificed. 6 weeks in wolf form, unable to speak or explain, protecting someone you'd never met simply because your king commanded it." "It was our honor," Orla said simply. "Though I'll admit, it's nice to sleep in a bed again instead of on cold ground." Laughter rippled through the group, easy and warm. These warriors had become family, bound not just by duty, but by shared experience and genuine affection. Movement at the garden's edge caught Fiona's attention. Jasper approached slowly, his weathered face creased with satisfaction. Behind him, a young woman carried scrolls and books. "Forgive the interruption, your majesties," the old healer said, bowing. "But I thought you'd want to see the latest enrollment numbers for the school." "How many?" Fiona asked eagerly. 73 students now, from all corners of Valdoria. We're teaching them not just healing, but how to recognize and cleanse corruption." Jasper's blue eyes gleamed with pride. "Your parents would be so proud, Fiona. The Whitley legacy of healing continues through you, stronger than ever." Tears pricked her eyes. The school, built in her parents' memory, had become her greatest achievement beyond her children. Every student who learned to heal, who dedicated themselves to helping others, honored Samuel and Margaret Whitley's sacrifice. "Thank you, Jasper, for everything, for training me, for watching over me, for being the grandfather my children need." The old healer's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "The honor is mine, child." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, the royal family remained in the gardens. The spectral guard shifted to wolf form one by one, unable to resist playing with the twins who squealed with delight at the massive white creatures. Ileana grabbed fistfuls of Brennan's fur, giggling as he gently licked her chubby hands. Finn watched with solemn golden eyes, reaching toward Orla's muzzle with careful, deliberate movements. "They're not afraid," Edric observed, wonder in his voice. Most children would be terrified of wolves so large. "They know these wolves kept them safe," Fiona said, leaning against her mate's solid warmth. "Even in the womb, they felt your protection. All of you." Below, in the castle courtyard, she could see servants and nobles going about their evening routines. The kingdom thrived under Edric's rule, strengthened by peace and prosperity. The corruption Vaughn had seeded was being methodically rooted out, replaced by the healing light of her growing school. "I love you," Edric murmured against her hair, his arms encircling her from behind. "From the moment I saw you at that festival, laughing under lanterns, I knew you were meant to be mine. Every challenge we faced, every moment of darkness, led us here, to this perfect moment." Fiona turned in his embrace, her hands framing his bearded face. "I love you too, my king, my mate, my Goldeye who watched over me when I didn't even know I needed protection." Their kiss was sweet and lingering, full of promise and devotion. When they pulled apart, both twins were reaching for them, demanding attention with imperious baby sounds. The 12 white wolves arranged themselves in a loose circle around the family, just as they had around Fiona's cabin 6 months ago. Eternal guardians, devoted protectors, family in every way that mattered. As twilight descended over Thornval Castle, Fiona Whitley Thornval, Luna Queen of Valdoria, held her children close and looked toward the future with hope. The cabin in the borderlands waited, a testament to where love had bloomed in the darkest of circumstances. Her parents' memory lived on through the healers she trained. And here, surrounded by those who loved her most, she'd finally found where she belonged. The wolves began to howl, their voices rising in a harmony that spoke of joy and triumph and promises kept. And in that moment, Fiona knew with absolute certainty that she would never be alone again.